The BBC. Now, Donald Trump has never been a fan of the BBC, but he certainly won't be after this. The speech that he gave, the infamous speech, I suppose, that he gave on the 6th of January before the storming of the Capitol was completely doctored by the BBC's Panorama programme. Have a look at the real version and the Panorama version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
So he said, we're going to walk down to the Capitol, I'll be with you, we're going to cheer on our brave senators. And look, he was contesting the result of the election. Absolutely. By the way, not the first person to do it. The Democrats heavily contested the result of an election 25 years before that, and we went through months and months of court cases. But what Panorama did was to take what he said 53 minutes later and doctor that into the clip and say, look, Trump basically urged people to go and storm the Capitol. And it is an absolute disgrace. Joe, I know you're all over this story. This has been leaked from the BBC, hasn't it?
Yes, and I think it's important for people to understand this was a programme that went out about a year ago, just before the American election.
It could have influenced the election.
Unlikely, I would have thought. But, you know, it went out then. Yeah. Many people might have watched it, might not bothered, might not have noticed. It's not unusual, and I'm sure anyone who watches television knows perfectly well, to clip things. And, you know, politicians, including you, often say they've taken it out of context because you haven't taken the whole bit.
Sure.
But that is clearly very bad editing, because what they haven't done, they haven't made a montage where they've got, you know, pictures and things. It sounds as though the sentence runs together. But what I find more worrying, Nigel, is A, that should never have happened, but B, Michael Prescott, who I have known for a very long time, you know, who is a very...
This is the guy that's put the story out there.
Well, he is the independent advisor to the BBC on their sort of, or was up until the summer.
Standards, basically.
Yes, basically. And he raised deep concerns over this, and he raised it at the highest level. Now, you know, there are a number of layers of hierarchy in the BBC, and nobody saw fit to do anything about it. Now, I think that is the shocking thing. It's not so much the appalling editing and the lack of, you know, and it's made by an independent production company. Well, I used to run an independent production company, and they were all over us like a rash, you know, checking everything. So I don't understand why either the head of news, Deborah Turness, or Samir Shah, chairman of the Governors, or the head of the BBC, Tim Davie, have not sorted this out. And for the BBC to say today, we won't comment on leaked material, I think there is a reason. And, you know, I will defend the BBC till my dying day, because they do brilliant things and it is one of our best assets, but it's only an asset if you can trust it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point, isn't it? Institutional bias.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade, and in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
it seems to be very deep within the BBC. Liz Kershaw made a comment today. Now, she was 30 years at the BBC on news and various entertainment programmes as well. And her point was that actually, the way she put it, it's almost as if they all come from the same background, similar class. They're so biased, they don't even think they're biased.
Yeah, trust is really hard to earn, but very easy to lose. And with examples like this, that trust that the BBC does need and has in the past deserved is very easy to lose. And it's no wonder people say that they are biased. When you see this sort of reporting and editing, it's just not on. And, actually, I think the BBC, in hindsight, will go, hang on, how did this happen? Heads need to roll. Yeah. That's the only way people will learn.
But we've had this, we had Bob Villan at Glastonbury.
This is not the first.
No, and it's this thing about where's your sense where you know something is wrong? As a producer, as a director, anybody who's ever been...
You should know it's wrong.
It's instinctive. Yeah. And you would actually sit in the editing suite and you'd go, hang on a minute, we need to change the pictures to make sure that it's clear.
Now, do we have a BBC response to this for me to read out? Yes, we do. A BBC spokesman told GB News, while we don't comment on leaked documents, when the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully. Michael Prescott is a former advisor to a board committee where differing views and opinions of our coverage are routinely discussed and debated. And we're going to put the licence fee up to £181 a year. So there you are. If you don't pay it, you could go to prison, but you could always watch GB News for free.
Listen, the thing about this is, when you're documentary making, you want to try... It's a visual art as well as, a journalistic endeavour for a programme like Panorama. So you want visually to make a nice piece of television. You want it to be as impactful as possible, and you'll put some of the most powerful statements in at the top of your show. But the difference here, especially when it's a journalistic endeavour, is to take something... then, take something else, an hour down the speech, lump them together to completely change the truth of what that individual, in this case President Trump, was saying at that speech on January the 6th, 2021, at that time, of course, when protesters went to the Capitol. There was then serious disorder outside the Capitol as well. So it's without a doubt, editing to change the truth of what was actually said. We've had a lot of reaction coming in. Boris Johnson, for instance, said that this is a total disgrace. The BBC has doctored footage of Trump to make it look as though he incited a riot when he, in fact, said no such thing. We have Britain's national broadcaster using a flagship programme to tell palpable untruths about Britain's closest ally. Is anyone at the BBC going to take responsibility and resign? And just in the last few seconds, actually, Suella Braverman, former Home Secretary, has also just tweeted, scrap the licence fee. She says, that's important, actually, and not out of context, because we are in a period leading up to the renewal of the BBC's charter in 2027. The BBC is in negotiations with the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, over that particular renewal, and she says nothing is off the table in terms of the funding of the BBC. So scandals like this will do the BBC no good at all in trying to argue its case with Lisa Nandy.
The astonishing thing to me about this is there's quite a lot that you can legitimately criticise President Trump about January the 6th. He sat there for a long, long time while his supporters were breaking the windows of the Capitol. He could have sent out a tweet, he could have said stop, and he waited a long time before he did that. To me, that is perfect material enough to say this was not President Trump's finest hour. He could have stepped in, he could have prevented wanton vandalism and many people getting hurt. To then go the next step and pretend that he said something he didn't fundamentally undermines the case of the people that were trying to say Orange Man bad in the first place.
Yeah, listen, I think actually, trying to examine what Trump did at that time and use that, as I'm seeing people today using that as an excuse, oh, well, he did say this and that and the next thing. That's not the point here. We're not talking really about, whether Trump was right or wrong around the Capitol. We're talking about our national broadcaster on their flagship programme, this current affairs documentary Panorama, clearly splicing together pieces, twisting the truth of what was said. That's the issue here, is the national broadcaster, which likes to tell us so repeatedly that the truth matters, that they have 60 staff on their BBC Verify unit. It's all about that when they're being met all around by people who tell untruths. And you need to be able to tune in to this broadcaster to get its news and current affairs coverage and be certain that you get the actual factual, the facts of a story. But clearly, when they're twisting the facts like this to portray another narrative, how can they then be trusted on other matters? And to that end, I should just say, we're waiting because this is part of a 19-page dossier that a chap called Michael Prescott, an advisor to the BBC until June of this year, on their sort of their guidelines and the like, is he had presented to the BBC, said it was effectively ignored. He has given that document to the Telegraph. The Telegraph are going to be releasing more in the way of what they say is evidence of the way in which the BBC has been less than impartial. And we're expecting some revelations about the BBC, in particular BBC Arabic service
Gaza.
coverage of the Gaza war.